to skip ahead to former CIA agent Mike Baker, who's got more on the investigation. He was a covert officer, and he's now president of a global security firm, Diligence LLC. Mike, thanks for joining us. Right off the top here, from your experience, the suspect is now in police custody. What's the focus of the investigation now?
Well, anytime you pick up somebody like this from an incident like this, terrorist-related, your first questions, once you get them under control, relate to any knowledge they have of impending attacks. So you want to get that right off the board. It's just, are you aware of any other operations, any other individuals planning attacks? Have you got any other devices planted anywhere around the city? Those are the first most important questions you get through. Then, after that, what are you looking to do? Well, you're looking to understand his associates, his linkages to possibly other individuals who may have had some role to play in this. Did he purchase all the components for the explosive devices himself? If not, who did? What's your association to that person? What are their motivations? It's a very labor-intensive process, and in concert with that, you have everything else that's going on. You have the financial and communications research that you're doing related to forensic analysis of his laptop, for instance, or phones that may be associated with him. You're continuing to do all the forensic work off of the unexploded and exploded devices that have been picked up as part of the evidence gathering effort. So this is it's a process. It takes time, but it builds and it leads you eventually, ultimately, it's the only way, by doing it in a methodical process, leads you to, motivations, other associates, these sort of things.
Mr. Baker, you brought up an interesting potential development, the possibility of other bombs as yet unexploded. The authorities will obviously question Rahami in that regard. What kind of pressure are they able to put on him to get that information?
Well, I mean, this is not, this is not post 9/11, with a rendition program where, we're able to be perhaps a little bit more aggressive in terms of the interviewing. This, we're in the United States and we follow the rule of law, and so this, he will very quickly be lawyered up, and it's a matter of can the interviewers skillfully bring him along? What's his mindset? He may come into this thing and think, I'm not telling you anything, and he may hold that line. You may be able to build some trust there or find some commonality that allows you to start peeling away the layers and get him to talk. You're never really sure until you get in the room and start dealing with him. But we're in the United States, and we follow the rules that are on the books.
Is it also a concern, though, at this point, from what we know, there was no word about Rahami with being known to investigators, being known to the terror network. Is that a big concern for officials right now?
Well, it's the reality that exists. I mean, there are a lot of individuals, I would argue, like Rahami, like Omar Mateen from down in Orlando, that may or may not be on our radar for any reason, whether that is a stack of driving violations or whether it's because they've come across the radar as part of a counterterrorism investigation related to somebody else, and they somehow come in contact and we become aware of them. But, the situation is that people, after an incident like this, there tends to be that talk, well, how come we didn't know about this guy? Well, we don't know about this guy, perhaps, because we have limitations as to what we can do. There's civil liberties and privacy, and then there's security. And you can only open a file and then maintain an investigation on somebody if it meets the requirements and the guidelines that have been set. Otherwise, we're not out there watching everybody as much as maybe the feature films and some folks would like to make it look like. That's not happening. If you want that to happen, then sure, you've got to expand security guidelines and surveillance guidelines, but you're taking away from civil liberties and privacy. That conversation always exists. We're always looking to calibrate, somewhere on that spectrum. But we're not watching everybody. Unlike, how some people wanted to talk about after the metadata incident, that's not the way it actually works.
What about where he bought his supplies, though? I mean, he obviously was able to purchase these. We don't know whether or not if it was locally, but will investigators be following that route as well?
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's one of the key things you can pull off of both exploded and unexploded devices. You're looking at the parts, the components of the device, and you're looking at the origins. Where were they made? Where were they purchased? How were they purchased? Maybe there's a credit card receipt that you can pull during the course of that investigation. That's going to lead you perhaps to either the custody and the suspect in custody, or it could lead you to a completely unknown associate at this point in time. So there's a great deal of information that is available right now to the authorities. But again, it takes time. I can't stress this enough. The fact that we've done this, a lot over the past, many years now, since 9/11 in particular, doesn't make it any easier necessarily. Every investigation is a labor-intensive process.
Mr. Baker, I want to get your reaction to a few things that we know right now. The suspect was found sleeping in the doorway of a bar. That's one. The explosives that we suspect are his or have his fingerprints on them, they didn't kill anybody. One went off way before people were in the vicinity. Another was inside a dumpster, which muted the impact of the blast. When you take these three facts and put them together, what's your conclusion as to how sophisticated this attack was or was not?
Well, the devices themselves are not particularly sophisticated. I don't want to speculate on some of this that we're going to move into here shortly. But just in looking at the devices, the pressure cookers, I mean, again, the same sort of thing that was concocted by the Tsarnaev brothers for the Boston Marathon bombings, the pipe bombs. These sort of things, you don't need to be Lex Luthor to put these together. You need a modicum of resource. You need motivation, obviously, and some knowledge. But I don't want to say that this guy is a rocket scientist, because that's not the case in terms of the devices that they've used. In terms of purchasing these various components, these various items, I don't want to speculate, because I'm not clear on the nature of the explosive materials. But I suspect that these things could all be purchased under the radar at this point, not alert the authorities in terms of items that may be controlled.
What about the locations that were targeted, Mike? I mean, you had a local race where veterans were racing. You also had a Saturday night in a popular neighborhood in Manhattan, and then a public place in Elizabeth. What do you say about those types of areas where apparently he was targeting?
Right. It's a very good question, but it also, it looks. At least the race, the Seaside, New Jersey explosion that took place ahead of that race, that certainly looks calculated. Putting the device in, or the devices in Chelsea, again on a Saturday evening, it's a crowded area. It's the sort of target. It's a very soft target. It's a sort of target that an individual like this, whether he has accomplices or not, would tend to favor. I mean, again, his resources aren't extensive. They may not have, if there's support there, it may not be that many, and they may not have any experience in surveillance, for instance, of targets. They may not have a real protocol there for that, like you would with some more battle-tested terrorist suspects. So these targets appear to be the sort of thing that you would expect somebody with not too much experience to be looking for, something easy. The fact that he put the exploded device that was in Chelsea, the one that did go off, it looks like it was not inside the dumpster. It looks like it was perhaps underneath. Anytime you contain an explosion, I guess my point here is that if you take that explosive device and you put it inside something like a dumpster, like a container of some type, that tends to amplify the explosion. It tends to make it even more worse. But this looks like, my understanding is, it was probably shoved underneath the dumpster. Now, the one that was found in Elizabeth City, the bag with the unexploded pipe bombs, that may well be that he was at that point looking to dump the gear. He knew that he was going to become a subject of a manhunt, and so he was looking to get rid of any remaining evidence. But you can't make that leap right there, which is why when they're sitting now with him in the interview room, they're going through this process. Okay, well, how many did you make? How much material? Where did you make these? And they're going to be scouring that area and wherever he was making these devices. So there's a lot of work left to be done.
So, Mr. Baker, just one last question, and it's really the key question that many people are going to have today. These areas that were targeted, really soft targets, on Remarkable Street in New York. You have a train station in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and you have a U.S. citizen as the prime suspect. Given soft targets, given apparently random attacks by somebody here legally, what can be done to prevent this in the future?
Very little is the honest answer.
Thank you for it.
And what you can do is what we are doing, which is working, again, within the parameters of what is allowed within law enforcement in terms of identifying potential suspects, gathering up enough evidence to then get a court order to open an investigation and to continue that investigation, doing those things that you're allowed to. But if people are out there imagining that law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level is monitoring everybody's Facebook and monitoring everybody's social media to try to find somebody who's starting to become radicalized, that's not the way this country operates. We can have that conversation, but that conversation and those changes need to be made up on Capitol Hill.
Great points today. Thank you. Former CIA Covert Operations Officer, now president of global security firm Diligence LLC, Mike Baker. Thank you.
Thank you.